Amazing. Well, thanks for pulling the room together, Daphne. We're all here because of you. I'm going to jump in and I'm going to watch the chat. So I have questions along the way, but Daphne, feel free to jump in if anything. If you see anything that you think we should pause and take a look at. Welcome to Freelancing 101 Teacher Edition. Today, I want to cover a few things. I want to cover what it means to freelance, the boring but important legal and financial implications of freelancing, potential freelance services that you can offer, instructional design, copywriting, virtual assistants, a lot of them actually. I'll call out a lot of options because there are way more options than you may even realize. I'm going to talk a little bit about what you need to get started if you choose to get started. And we'll end this by talking a little bit about how to sell without being salesy, if this does seem like something that you are interested in doing. So grab a pen, grab a notebook, let's dive in. I will be sending you the recording of this as well if you want it. So if you do want to just sit back and relax and watch, you certainly can do that. I will send you a recording right after it uploads to Zoom. My name is Jay. I'm from Ohio. I'm in Columbus, Ohio now. I grew up in a farm town of Ohio called Salina. That's where I went to high school. I've been spending a lot of time lately as a creator building Freelancing School, this platform to help people learn how to make a living freelancing. I have a podcast called Creative Elements, which is why I have this extra mic here and a whole graveyard of mics behind me, if you can see it in the corner. And I've been creating courses for LinkedIn Learning. They bought lynda.com. So lynda.com, LinkedIn Learning, same thing these days. And I grew up in Ohio surrounded by teachers. My mom was a high school teacher. She taught English for almost 30 years. My dad taught industrial arts for 36 years, I want to say. My older sister Katie here on the left, she teaches English at the very same high school next door to my mom's room. And her husband, he teaches math in the same high school. And I'm going to stop it there, but if I went to my aunts and uncles and cousins, also all of them, pretty much, K through 12 teachers. Pretty crazy. I was a good student. I was good at school. I was not so good at sports. I tried to be good at football. Didn't quite make it as well as I thought I would, but I did the school thing pretty well. I was a nerd. But I went to school, I went to Ohio State to learn business instead of teaching. I thought that business sounded fun. I thought that that sounded more interesting to me, and I wanted to follow the money. That's what I was doing. And I joined a team right out of college. We started a company called Tixers. We raised some money. This photo is actually just like a wiffle ball tournament that we won, and we got a $1,000 grant from it because my co-founders were good at sports, unlike me. And that company had some success. It was acquired in 2015, meaning another company bought it. We worked for that company for a little bit of time. And then somehow I ended up back in the family business of teaching in a way. I have 7 courses on LinkedIn Learning. I've independently produced 4 of my own courses, 3 of them on freelancing, 1 of them on podcasting, 11 total courses. I think there's a lot of potential to teach online, but I started by freelancing. That's how this all got started for me. I knew that I wanted to make a living and I wanted to have a lot of flexibility and I wanted to do things on my own terms. And freelancing was the vehicle that allowed me to do that financially. And last year, as a freelancer, generated more than 6 figures of income, which is like the freelancing mecca thing that people love to talk about. Actually attained that, which was great. And I worked with some really great clients like Atlassian, LinkedIn, Smart Passive Income, lynda.com, the Ohio State University, some other clients who have not given me permission to use their logo, but are also very legitimate. And if you're new to freelancing, I want to start by laying out what this even means. What is freelancing? Freelancing just means to work as an independent company rather than by being employed through a W-2 by somebody else. Freelancers are self-employed. They're often referred to as independent contractors. They are hired by other companies on a part-time or short-term basis, but they do not receive the same compensation as full-time employees or have the same level of commitment to any particular company. And when I say they don't receive the same compensation, I don't mean they're paid less. I mean that their employment package just looks different, because as a freelancer, you are technically responsible for how work is done. The employer cannot strictly tell you how work has to be done, or they have to classify you as an employee. By employing you in a freelance capacity, they're also not required by law to give you the same employment benefits like healthcare, a 401k. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. That does not mean that you're earning less. It just means that your means of packaging your own employment is a little bit different. And just for fun, in case we have...
If you don't mind me hopping in here, a lot of people have probably heard my story as working as an educational consultant. And the majority of educational consultants that you will talk to are independent contractors and freelancers, myself included. So I have kind of a unicorn contract that is a yearly contract, which is, as a freelancer, a little bit unheard of, but I've been employed by a larger company year after year as a freelancer, as an educational consultant. So that's kind of where this whole ties in with me as well.
Yeah, I don't have a specific slide on this, so I'll pull it out there now. When you're hired as a freelancer, you can be paid in a lot of different ways. You can be paid hourly. You can be paid monthly on a retainer. You can be paid quarterly on a retainer. You can be paid annually on a retainer. The beautiful thing about freelancing is the way that you are compensated is in your control, and what you can convince or come to a conclusion with a client makes the most sense for both parties, which is really, really great. For the history teachers in the room who might be interested about the term freelancing, it goes back to the 1800s when a freelance was a mercenary who would fight for whatever country wanted to pay them the most. And lance was the sword, the weapon that they used, kind of like jousting. I didn't know that until I started doing research on this, but it's interesting nonetheless. You might hear a bunch of other terms that actually also mean freelancing. So any of these terms I'm about to show all mean basically the same thing. Contract work, a contract job, an independent contractor, a 1099, a contract consultant, contract to hire. All these things mean the same thing. They all mean that you are being paid independently without a strict long-term employment contract to do work on behalf of a company and be compensated for that effort. A few things that I've done as a freelancer: I've built WordPress websites, Squarespace websites, I prepared a podcast launch, I helped somebody name a company, I've written copy for websites, written copy for emails, I've created email marketing systems, I've done coaching, I've done innovation consulting. The point being, there are a lot of things you can do as a freelancer, and you don't have to choose just one specific thing. It's easier to market yourself as one specific thing, but you can actually do a lot of things. It really just comes down to, what do people want to hire you for, and what do you feel confident that you can provide a result for? For the teachers in the room, which is all of you, these are the things that I think make the most sense out of a list of like 70 plus things that I pulled. I started just wanting to save space, but there are a lot of options here. A virtual or executive assistant, project manager, researcher, instructional design is a popular one, presentation design, illustration, accounting, bookkeeping, data analytics, brand strategy and analysis, copywriting, content writing or editing, proofreading, grant writing, technical writing. All these things, if you don't already feel like you're really good at these are also very learnable skills. And none of these things require a specific degree. Sometimes people will get a certification for certain skills, and that's something you can get through an online course like Udemy. But really, most employers hiring freelancers, they don't care what your background is or what degrees you have or don't have. What they care is that you can deliver the result that they want. And really, if you've been teaching for 10 years, but you found yourself really good at social media, it's very likely that somebody can see your work on social media and want to hire you part-time, full-time to do that for them. You can freelance doing anything. And so I think before we move forward, I want to talk a little bit more about what employment really means, because this is a hang up that I see a lot of people have in this profession. I've seen friends, family talk about this, where it feels like employment is like a very separate thing from freelancing. And I would argue that it's not really. Because in any sense, you're basically selling your time for compensation. And I'm using compensation as like this big umbrella term, because it's not just cash, it's also healthcare, retirement benefits. If we break this down specifically, the differences between 1099 freelance employees and W-2 full-time employees, freelancers are paid whatever you're able to sell, however many projects at whatever price. W-2 employees have a paid salary that's kind of a cap. Like, you're not going to go beyond that salary. You might be able to negotiate a raise every couple of years, but when you're freelancing, you have no cap on what you can earn as long as you can sell that project and deliver that work. Freelancers can work as much or as little as they want, any time that they want, whatever hours you want to work to deliver on the things that you've promised that you can sell. W-2 employees, they're typically contracted to work 30 to 40 hours a week. There are some trade-offs. As a freelancer, you have to withhold your own taxes at tax time because no one's setting that aside for you, and that's an important thing to know heading into it. Your employer probably withholds that for you. So when tax time comes, you actually get a refund because they usually hold more than is necessary. If you're a freelancer, if you don't hold back taxes, when it comes tax time, you realize, oh, I owe money, I need to pay that, unless you are aware of this and you start saving proactively, which you should. Daphne, did you have something you wanted to cut in there?
Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I might have made a face on accident.
No worries. As a freelancer, you are technically a business owner. As a W-2 employee, you are federally classified as an employee. In both cases, you will actually just file one tax return, unless as a freelancer you start building an agency and you go beyond yourself, which for the scope of this discussion, you won't. You will just file one tax return still. With a W-2 job, you're often provided healthcare benefits. As a freelancer, you do have to provide those to yourself if you're freelancing full-time. If you don't have a W-2 job that's bringing this in, and you can freelance part-time. W-2 jobs typically contribute to your retirement. And as a freelancer, again, that's just something you have to take care of for yourself. But you have the freedom to work with who you want, when you want. As a W-2 employee, you usually have contract restrictions with non-competes, and you can't be employed elsewhere. Freelancing has a lot more flexibility. I bring this all up because the differences here are important, but not massive. Like, as a freelancer, I freelanced for several years. I was able to find my own healthcare, and it was fine. I was able to contribute to my own retirement funds, and it was fine. It's not that having a W-2 job is inherently paying you more money. It just seems that way because they are taking care of things that you don't have to think about or take care of. But they're very manageable things that you can think about and you can take care of. And when you freelance successfully, you can earn a lot more than your full-time 40-hour salary would allow for.
Yeah, if you don't mind me popping in here, just from the hiring perspective, as someone who has been hiring teachers and former teacher freelancers to work in the business and working with an accountant, one thing that was interesting for me to learn about was your salary is actually lowered to compensate for the healthcare and the taxes. So I'm able to actually pay freelancers more per hour than I would have if I was able to hire them full time. And that's not exclusive just to me. That's, across the board. When someone's hiring you, they lower your actual salary to go with the healthcare benefits.
A lot of freelancers that I work with, and granted, they aren't coming out of education most of the time when they put this strategy into play. It's possible, but I'm not sure if it works this way in education. But a lot of freelancers that I work with will leave their job, but in leaving their job, tell their employer, I'm going freelance full-time. I'm willing to give you 20 hours per week of my time at this rate. And that is actually typically higher than what they were getting paid as a W-2 employee if you broke it down hourly. And a lot of employers will go for that because it's hard to find somebody new and train them, someone who knows the culture, who knows your systems. It's easier to hold on to that person a little bit longer, and that can be a really good segue into freelancing full-time if you want to. Bottom line here is this. Freelancing is just a less restrictive form of employment. Your compensation package looks differently, but you can figure that all out, and you have a lot more flexibility when you work, where you work, who you work for, who you work with. It's just a lot more expansive and within your control. And I know some of those differences of healthcare, of retirement, may seem scary, but you just need a few simple systems. You need to be aware of them. You need to put some systems in place, and you'll be fine. So I want to go through kind of a 9-step starting to freelance checklist to understand, like, from here, if I'm starting from zero, what are the things I need to do to start freelancing successfully? I'm going to go step by step, starting with defining your goals for freelancing. You need to be honest with yourself from the beginning. What is your goal here? Do you want to freelance full-time? Do you want to replace your full-time income? Freelancing part-time or as a side hustle is a great place to start. There is less pressure to generate income immediately. You can be more thoughtful with the type of work that you want to do and the clients you want to do it with. When you remove too much financial pressure from it, you can start in the way that you want to start, working with who you want to work with, and it's a lot more comfortable. And this is how I recommend a lot of people get started, because it also gives you a chance to learn the ropes and learn how you feel about it. Do you enjoy doing this? Is this something you could see yourself doing to a higher degree? So I would think that freelancing before you even feel like you need to is a good idea, because you need to build relationships, you need to build trust with people, and those relationships, that trust, takes time to form. The good news is you probably have actually all the creative skills you need to freelance successfully, for somebody to pay you for doing work for them directly. I would venture to bet that everybody in this room has a skill, has multiple skills that people would rather pay money to let you do for them than to take the time on their own to learn that skill and try to implement that outcome. Your business as a freelancer will be built around the unique skills that you have to offer. So you need to choose which of those skills you want to leverage. And you choose that based on what feels valuable, but also like sustainably, what feels like fun and like something that you want to do. Especially if you're thinking about a career change. You owe it to yourself to change into something that you're excited about and that you want to do. So step 1 is identifying the different skills you've built over the years that other people may not have, would pay you to use. You can start by thinking about the skills you've been explicitly paid to leverage. You know, if you're an English teacher, chances are you're a great writer. You're a great editor. You're great at proofreading. That may be obvious. But there are also skills that you've probably implicitly learned through the course of that work. Like maybe in doing your lesson plans, you've gotten really good at creating presentations in PowerPoint. That's actually something that people are excited to pay for in a lot of places. And then think about things that you've learned as a hobby. What are some of your interests that you've just learned to indulge and get interested in? Maybe because you enjoy social media, you've learned how to use Canva really, really well. Awesome. There's a lot of space for you to help people create graphics, to do social media. That's just amazing. If any of these roles, if any of these skills required creativity or the use of a specific software, that's a really good place to start too, because that's even more likely that someone's willing to pay you rather than take the time to learn that skill or learn that software. Step 3 is define your target clients, the people that you want to work with. Think about the skills that you've chosen to start a freelance business with in that previous step. What type of person, what type of organization, what type of brand might need that type of assistance? And who would you want to work with? Because again, you owe it to yourself to be thoughtful and intentional with what you want to do and who you want to work with. I encourage people to create a client avatar, like create a fictional representation of the person or company that you want to serve. And then turn that into real people, real companies, who fits that avatar, who are the people, who are the companies, who are the brands that I might actually want to work with, and put them in a spreadsheet. Like this is the beginning of making these things true, is believing that they can be true, laying out exactly who you do want to work with, Anything is possible, but only if you believe in yourself and work towards it.
Do you mind if I stop you here for just 1 second? One
No, go
thing I
ahead.
know you've been talking a lot about, like business to business kind of freelancing, and it looks intimidating where people might not even really realize that they've worked with freelancers themselves. You might have been a target client. I personally, and I think Jay, you and your fiance are probably planning your wedding as
Oh,
well.
yeah.
We are working with wedding planners,
Oh, yeah.
photographers. We're working with all of these different people who are freelancers themselves,
Totally.
and
Totally.
maybe a vegan caterer is looking specifically for us as
Totally.
their ideal client. Like, you can create something that works in your schedule, and it doesn't have to seem intimidating. It can be a client, like a wedding guest.
Totally. And to take that a step further, my fiance is a realtor and she is still a 1099 independent contractor. It's the same type of work. She works with individuals, she helps them find houses. All of this applies to her in the same way, though. I do typically speak to businesses, organizations, because a fact of life is it's easier to sell to people with money. And businesses have that more than individuals do in most cases. Businesses understand the concept of investment. They understand the concept of if I invest in this person to do this work, I can quantify why that is to my benefit. But people can do that too. I'm doing that right now, as Daphne said, with photographers for our weddings, for our wedding. We know, like, I know if I hire this photographer, as expensive as it may feel right now, I'm going to do this one time. These photos are going to last a lifetime. I'm doing the same adjustment in my mind, and you can work with individuals on this stuff too. Once you've kind of figured out these skills that you want to leverage, now you need to package your skills into a service offering, because people buy solutions, we buy outcomes, we don't buy skills, and we don't buy services. And that took me a while to understand myself. But if you go out and you say, I'm a copywriter, who wants to hire a copywriter? You're not going to get much of a response because people don't necessarily know what that means. Whereas if you go out and you say, hey, I'm really good at helping you write the words that go on your website, that becomes something that people understand that they want and need, because they've probably been staring at the website like, this does not tell my story. This about page is not good. And if you say, I can help you write an about page that really tells your story in a compelling way, I'm listening. And you may still identify as a copywriter, but we're not looking for the skill or the service. We're looking for the outcome. Katie says in the chat, perhaps I should wait for the Q&A to ask this, but if you do work with individuals as clients, how do taxes work since you wouldn't receive a 1099? It would be the same way. You would recognize that revenue as income. They should actually still send you a 1099 from their accountant. It's not, there's no like legal problem if that doesn't happen, but any income you receive, you should be tracking as income, and your taxes are going to work the same way. It's just going to be business income, even if you work with individuals instead of businesses. So from here, I want to talk quickly about kind of my overarching favorite sales strategy in a way that is not salesy, in a way that I think you can get behind. And I put it into an acronym, which I call the eyes and ears method, which is both an acronym and a philosophy. Like, you can kind of intuit what it means to have extra sets of eyes and ears for your business. If you break it down as an acronym, eyes means establish your elevator speech, and ears means empower advocates to refer sales. I'm going to break that down piece by piece. Establish your elevator speech. Your elevator speech, or elevator pitch is said more frequently, but it doesn't fit into the acronym as nicely, so I said elevator speech is a short description of what you do. The goal is, in one breath, you should be able to tell someone who you help and how you help them. It needs to be memorable, and the shorter and more specific it is, the better. I like the framework, I help X do Y. I help this type of person solve this type of problem. And if you use that framework, some examples here, I help creatives make money freelancing. I help B2B SaaS companies write better emails. I help brides capture their weddings. I help podcasters grow their audience. It's very clear what you're offering and to whom here. And we remember these specific terms, but our memories are not very good. So the shorter you keep this, the better. Notice that in all these examples, there's no and, there's no or. If you're introducing ands and ors into this pitch, it's probably a little too long. So when you help X do Y, make sure you're solving an actual problem for that person. And when in doubt, most solutions for especially businesses, this is going to be a little bit different on the individual side because the individual is probably purchasing things emotionally in like the wedding photography example. But for most people, for most businesses, if they're investing into help from somebody else, it boils down to they want more customers, they want more clients, they want more subscribers, they want more followers. They want to increase their profit, which means increasing revenue or decreasing cost. Or they want to feel better about themselves, and it's kind of a vanity thing, to be honest. But if you can show how hiring you and spending $1 with you today becomes $2 tomorrow, you're going to find people who will hire you all day, you know? And most of the time, this math equation is pretty clear if you ask the right questions. You need to find out, why are they hiring you to do this thing? And if you ask these questions, why? Why do you want a better about page on your website? Well, we think a better about page on our website means that more people will go to our contact page and ask us about a quote. Why do you want that? Well, more people who ask us for a quote means more people will turn into clients. Oh, okay. So you're equating having better words on your website with having more clients, making more money. Great. So if hiring me is going to get you more money, let's talk about how much it costs to hire me and how quickly that will pay off based on how many more clients you're going to get from this work. Step 5 would be to legally incorporate your business. This comes with a disclaimer that I am not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. I have personally chosen and often tell people they should consider filing an LLC because having a business entity protects your personal assets. If for some reason you are a wedding photographer and something goes wrong at the wedding and somebody wants to take legal action, and this is a total edge case, I have never heard a freelancer in my sphere getting into legal action whatsoever. But if that did happen, your personal assets are protected. They can only pursue action against the business itself. Having an illegal entity also allows you to create what's called an EIN, an employment identification number, so that when you're doing contracts and documents and official things like that as a business, you don't have to put your social security number on things. You can use your EIN instead, which is nice from like a peace of mind identity standpoint. And with an LLC and an EIN, that means you can now open a business bank account at any local bank. To do this, to file an LLC, you need to choose a name for your business. Most states will actually allow you to do this all online. I think there are only a handful of states that don't allow you to do it online at this point. They also typically let you do a name search in that same portal, so you can find out, is anybody else operating under the same name? And it will usually warn you like, hey, there's already a name for this LLC in this state. Maybe you should consider a different name. But most states will let you file that online for like $75 to $120.
If you don't mind me adding also with the EIN should be free. If you type in, I'm making an EIN, you're going to get Google search ads at the top that are going to try and charge you money. It's like a company doing a third-party service. The EIN process is totally free. Just make sure it's like through the IRS.
I think I'm putting this in the chat. I think freelancing.school/EIN redirects to the IRS website where the EIN is free and almost immediate. Like literally just happens like, here you go, now you have it. But you have to have the LLC first. Jamie asks, do you have a printable checklist? I will send the slides with the replay in an email after this, Jamie. Next, I would advise you to create a portfolio because portfolios allow you to show what you're capable of instead of just tell me that you're a great photographer. How many photographers are you going to hire because they tell you they're a good photographer? Probably none. You want to see their work. Same thing goes for really any type of freelance work that you do. Your portfolio work samples should align with the services you're offering. If you're saying, hey, I'm a freelance photographer, here's my portfolio, it's full of writing examples, it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Even if you do have multiple skills you can indulge, you either want to have a portfolio with like sections saying like, here's my writing work, here's my photography work, here's my marketing work, or you want your portfolio to be really speaking to like the aspirational work you want to do the most, so that the people who see it are more likely to hire you for that type of work. If you don't have a portfolio of work yet that you can display publicly, consider doing some spec work or practice work. There's an example I like to share. There was a woman who was a UX designer, a user experience designer, and just for fun, she did a complete redesign of what she thought Instagram should look like to be better than it is. And she just published that on her blog as like, here's what I think Instagram should do differently. And it was beautiful. And anyone hiring a UX designer can look at that and say, wow, this person is really good at this, and start to intuit what they can do for them. You can do that in a lot of different formats, but the point being, if you don't have work to show that you've been paid for in your portfolio, do some examples that are interesting to you that still illustrate the skill, even if it wasn't purchased. And there are a lot of places you can display this portfolio. You can put it on social media like Instagram if you are a visual artist or creative of some kind. You know, if you want to do photography, Instagram's great. If you want to do design, Instagram's great. Otherwise, you can just put it on your website with Squarespace or WordPress or Card or Webflow. Carla, I see your question in the chat about advice for healthcare options. If you could expand on that in the chat, I'd be happy to answer that, but I'm not exactly sure what you're asking. Step 7, develop a strategy for finding clients. So here's something that took me a while to learn that I think is really, really important. There are essentially 3 channels for finding clients, for finding paid work when you are freelancing or contracting. You can do direct to client, where you meet the client, you communicate with them, you work with them directly to create the outcome. You can subcontract, which basically means there are other organizations who are selling the work to the client and they're hiring you to fulfill part of it. This happens a lot with creative agencies, where maybe I'm a really great website developer as a firm, but this client also wants lifestyle photography as part of their website. So I might hire a photographer on our behalf to go take photos for us so we can put it into the website and give that to the client. And your pay in that situation would come from the firm that is subcontracting to you. And then there are marketplaces, places like Upwork, Fiverr, Freelancer.com. These places can be really good because you don't have to really very actively sell yourself once you build a little bit of a reputation up on the platform, but it does take some work to build a reputation on the platform. It's a little tough to get started, but the people who are consistent and tenacious on Upwork and really want to make that work for them, it can be a great place to just have this stream of client opportunities without having to meet people or find your way to opportunities. For the purposes of the rest of our time here, I want to focus on direct to client because I think that is long-term. If you want to build a freelancing business, the best place for you to go, because this is the most defensible. This is like how you build your own brand. You build a demand for your work specifically. It's just long-term more sustainable. You can charge higher rates. So let's talk a little bit more about this. So to do that, I need to teach a little bit of selling 101 as part of this freelancing 101. But selling is really important. So I know it feels scary, but please hang with me here for a moment. This is what's called a sales funnel. And the concept here is when you have conversations with potential clients, most of them do not become clients. You may have 10 conversations with people who seem like they might be clients. And by the time you get to the point of them deciding, am I going to hire you? That may turn into 5 people who actually want to hire you. Brenda says, you didn't mention Wix when you're talking portfolios. Any reason for that? No, Wix is fine too. Wix is a great option. So in these 4 steps, you first have to make somebody aware that you exist. I can't possibly hire you if I don't know that you exist. Once I know that you exist, I have to have some level of interest in working with you. Once I'm interested in potentially working with you, I have to make the definitive decision that I'm going to work with you. And then once I make that decision, I still actually have to take some sort of action like signing a contract, sending you a deposit, paying you, something like that. So most of the time, you have to start at the top, right? You have to make sure that people know you exist, and you have to get them interested in working with you if they're ever going to become clients. You work really hard, getting all that attention, trying to create interest, and then inevitably a lot of them fall off anyway. It's just the way the math works. So wouldn't it be really great if you could skip those 2 steps entirely and just focus on the most efficient, highest impact part of that funnel? That's what referrals do. That's why people love word of mouth. That's why people love referrals, because referrals are doing the work of making somebody aware that you exist and getting them interested in working with you. They are being an advocate on your behalf. Life as a freelancer is easy when you have high quality inbound leads coming to you. Leads like that, people coming to you, that comes from word of mouth. But what are these words and where are these mouths? The words are nice things about you and your work and are coming from people who know, like, and trust you already. And I call these people your advocates. The more advocates you have for you and your business, the more referrals you'll receive. This just becomes a numbers game at some point. The more people who already know, like, and trust you, the better the odds that there's someone out there at any given time who is saying nice things about you and sending people your way. This is probably obvious, but I'll say it anyway. Somebody else recommending your work is so much more powerful than you recommending your work. You're super biased. They're a little biased too, but it's still a lot more powerful coming from somebody else that what you do is great and that somebody should consider working with you. Okay, so we left off a little bit on the eyes and ears. Let's say you have your elevator speech. Next, empowering your advocates to refer sales. Once you have that elevator speech that I help X do Y, you need to start sharing it with your advocates, the people who care about you. Memorize it. Use the same phrase every time. I help creatives make money freelancing. Over time, that sticks in their minds. Those phrases, creatives, freelancing, it sticks in their minds if it is short and specific. As you create more advocates, the more likely it is that any one of them is referring you at any given time. And you should align this, I help X do Y, with your social media profiles too, if you are interested in marketing yourself through social media. Step 8, tap into your existing networks of people, which brings me back to the concept of advocates. This is a quote from a book on, it's from a guy named Robin Dreeke. I think he's a former FBI agent. His book is called The Code of Trust. He said, a tenet of evolutionary psychology is that people are hardwired to enjoy offering assistance, not only as a mechanism to receive assistance themselves, but also to satisfy the innate human drive for altruism. Why do I care about that? Well, you already have advocates, former clients, former coworkers, friends and family, people who admire your work. Every day, those people are talking to other people. And often that conversation touches on a problem or pain point that one of those people are having, because we love to talk about our problems. And as Robin Dreeke noted, your advocate, if they hear somebody talk about a problem, they're probably going to try to solve that problem, because this innate human thing of solving problems for people, that little bit of altruistic integrity that we have. You want to be the first person in mind when one of your advocates is trying to solve a problem for somebody else, because we often try to solve problems by throwing people at it. We say, you should talk to Daphne. You should talk to Jay. And they'll make an introduction. And that is where word of mouth referrals are originated. And if you have this mindset, if you're saying, I want to create new clients through referrals, through my advocates, you don't have to worry about finding clients anymore. You can let them find you. And instead of finding clients, you focus on creating clients, identifying opportunities that turn into projects around you naturally without looking too hard for them. To create clients, you need to start with relationships. You don't focus on trying to make clients, you try to make friends. You just try to create more genuine, kind relationships and friendships around you. And you treat every conversation you have with somebody as like an empathetic, fact-finding mission where you're focusing on that other person, you're asking them how they're doing, you ask them what they're struggling with, you ask them what's hard for them right now, and you see if you can solve that problem for them. If they tell you a problem that they're facing and it's something you can solve, you say, hey, I would love to help you with that. Here's what that would look like. If you can't solve that problem for them, but you know someone else who can, then you should refer them to that person. And that's continuing to build more relationships, to build more people around you who are looking out for you. If they start asking you, what are you doing? What are you up to these days? You can say, I'm actually really excited. I'm starting to freelance part-time. I'm helping X do Y. I'm helping brides capture their wedding day. I'm helping people build better presentations. I'm helping other teachers with their instructional design. You can start to throw out these specific terms and now people around you know what you're doing and they can be productive advocates for you. I'm going to pause here. I see Jacqueline has a question. If you help someone with editing, a cover letter, resume, etc., would you post an example of that in a portfolio on your website or have that person write a short testimonial or recommendation? Ideally both, Jacqueline, because if you post the letter itself, that's like a part of your portfolio, especially if you do kind of like a before and after. But if you get a short testimonial and recommendation, one, you should always try to get a testimonial from people that you've done work for. Two, now you can wrap this whole thing together into what's called a case study, where not only are you showing your work, but you're giving people a behind the scenes of your process. And you're saying, hey, here's where this started. Here were our goals. Here's what we decided to do as a project together. Here's my process. Here's the finished product. Here's what that client said. It becomes this wonderful, packaged, compelling story about what it's like to work with Jacqueline. And then last step, once you have all this in place, you know your skill, you know what you're trying to do, you've got it packaged up, you're helping X do Y, then it just becomes a game of creating more advocates. Because who do we hire? People we trust to do the job and people that we like. So ask yourself, who already trusts you? Who already likes you? And it's your advocates. It's the same people. Because your advocates will either tell people to hire you or they'll hire you themselves. So you should spend your time actively creating new advocates, reconnecting with existing advocates, and you don't have to do any like hard or salesy selling. You're just forming your relationships, you're making it known what you're doing, who you can help, and you're waiting for those referrals to come in. This is another reason why starting this all part-time makes a lot of sense to me, because this takes time. This process, if you don't want to push sales on people, if you want people to come to you, it takes a little bit of time to ramp that up. You can be more active. You can be more active in asking people, hey, who should I talk to? I'm trying to help X do Y. Who in your network is that I can talk to? And that's okay. But if you don't feel comfortable doing that, you just got to keep making friends. You got to keep telling them what you're up to, showing that you're doing the work, and taking it day by day. Statistically speaking, most conversations you have with people will not become projects. Because think about when I had my most successful year as a freelancer last year, I probably worked with a dozen clients. How many conversations do you think I had last year? Like hundreds, thousands? So statistically speaking, most conversations will not become projects. Don't put that pressure on yourself. Any conversation can yield new advocates though. Any conversation can make somebody like you and want to be an advocate for you in your business, because advocates create referrals. So I think about this as just like a simple ABC. Advocate before client. Every conversation I go into, I'm thinking I'm going to make this person an advocate. They have to be an advocate before their client, even if they advocate to themselves that they want to hire me. Some people will say no. That is expected. That is okay. A good closing rate in the sales world is like 20%. So if 2 out of every 10 conversations that feel like they could be a project turn into a project, you got to be ready to hear no. And most no means not now. You know, it doesn't mean never. It means not now. That's not something I can pursue right now. And that's okay. What you're selling, your service, this package is not for everyone. But when you know who it is for, you should offer it to as many of those people as you can, because you're actually doing them a disservice if you don't. If people want to hire somebody to solve a problem for them, and you can solve that problem, but they don't know that you can solve it for them, you're actually slowing down their ability to have this problem solved, which is a problem. It's a disservice.
There is a really good question in the chat from Emily right now also.
Any advice on leveraging a mailing list to help you get the word out? I have a pretty sizable mailing list, but I worry about how to share freelancing info with folks and coming across as too salesy. Think about, you're never selling anything to anybody if you're just letting them know what you're doing and saying, if you want to talk about this, I'm open to talk. You're making an offer. You know, I like to get people thinking about going to Starbucks. When you walk into Starbucks, you look at their menu, you buy what you want to buy, and no one's forcing you to buy anything. You leave happy, and you're glad that you traded that money for that coffee. It was worth it to you. Same is true for selling services if you do it right. You make people know what you're able to do for them, what the price is, and if they want that outcome, they will pay you, and they'll be happy about it. You're not forcing anybody to do anything. So I would encourage you, Emily, to just talk about why you're doing this, show them the work that you've done, show them what you're capable of, and just invite them to start a conversation. It's really hard to just say like, hey, do you want to hire me? Press this and send me $200 on PayPal. Like, that's not going to happen. It all starts with a conversation. So just talk about what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. And if you want to talk, hit reply and we can talk more about it. So a couple things in conclusion, and then we'll get to some more questions if you have them. So feel free to put them in the chat now. You can start freelancing part-time, and I would encourage you to test the waters and do that if this is calling to you as something interesting. You probably have all the creative skills you need to start monetizing or leveraging some of them. People buy from those who they trust and who they like. So start with people who trust you and like you. Those are your advocates. You don't have to push anything on them. You don't have to force them to buy anything. You just have to let them know this is what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and they're likely to become an advocate for you. Have conversations with these people who know, like, and trust you already. Treat them as empathetic, fact-finding missions. Ask them some questions. Create your freelance brand. Build your website. Put your portfolio up. Put it on your social media. And don't give up, because it only gets easier over time. As more people know about you, as more people work with you, as you build some social proof, it only gets easier. So some things you can do to take action on this immediately. Dial in your elevator speech. Think about the skills that you want to offer. Package them up into a service offering. I help X do Y. Think about the price that you want to charge for that. That just becomes I help X do Y for this price. Reach out to 10 of your advocates and schedule a time to talk, and make sure your social media and website messaging is aligned with that. Before I get to questions, I did want to say this presentation, which I whipped through a ton of slides, this is 3 of 38 lessons inside of my freelancing school course bundle. It's 3 courses: business for freelancers, marketing for freelancers, selling for freelancers. Those courses each have a full curriculum. Well, let me skip through the curriculum first. A full curriculum of, here are the lessons. Here's what's inside. There are templates, proposal templates, invoice templates, budget templates, email scripts that I've used, downloadable slides for each lesson, the checklist that somebody talked about in the chat, how to file an LLC in your state, how to get your EIN. Is all step-by-step inside Business for Freelancers. Marketing for Freelancers is all about making you feel more confident and comfortable marketing yourself, because you're going to get to a point where you know you do great work, but you just wish more people knew about it and you could get your name out there. So that's my meatiest course in terms of videos, 20 lessons, 20 videos, 18 lessons. There are a couple bonus workshops, a lot more scripts for emails and things in there. And then Selling for Freelancers is all about selling more projects, asking for higher rates for your projects. There's a template for a CRM, which helps you manage your relationships with potential clients and advocates. There's a whole lot here. And all of this I'm putting on sale through this for 25% off. I typically only offer up to like 20%. But I want to make this as affordable as possible. It's at freelancing.school/TCC for teacher career coach. I'll put that in the chat. That'll be available for the next week if you want to take me up on it, and you certainly don't have to. I just wanted to make the offer available to you if this is something you want to go deeper on and learn a lot faster. This is what one of the proposal templates looks like. Okay, because we're low on time, I'll just skip over to the question slide. And I'll answer any questions that you have. And I see a couple in the chat here. So let me read a couple of these. Yes, Lisa, the lessons are self-paced. If you did enroll in those courses, you'll have access to those courses forever. Any updates that I make to those courses, and you get them in real time. There are examples of portfolios there as well. Brenda, okay, sorry, I'll break a couple things down because I spoke kind of quickly. Those courses are typically $99 a piece. 25% off means each individual course is $74 and some change now. The bundle is typically $249. At 25% off, that comes down to $187 for all 3 courses, which is a $65 discount. Where to find examples of freelancing portfolios? That's a good question. A good place to start would probably be going to Upwork and looking at some of the people who are selling on Upwork actively and looking at their portfolios. A lot of people will upload their portfolio to a site called Dribbble with 3 B's. It's DRIBBBLE.com. I do have examples in the courses as well as examples on how to do case studies and testimonials really well, how to build your website, how to choose what website builder to use, how to choose where to spend time on social media, if you should create content, how to have conversations with advocates and potential clients. Alexis says, any tips for figuring out your elevator speech? I feel like I have a lot of areas I'm interested in working in. I've taken coursework to learn content creation and I'm ready, but I'm not quite sure how to narrow down my focus to find my clients. Yes. You should be aspirational, because the thing about client work is the type of clients you work with will determine the future clients you work with, because people are in similar circles. So if you work with a nonprofit, it's likely that when they refer you to somebody else, they'll refer you to another nonprofit, which can be great if you want to work with nonprofits. It's not great if you want to work with other types of organizations, because they're going to look at your portfolio and say, oh, this person works with nonprofits. This is not the type of work that I do. So you want to be aspirational with the type of people or organizations you want to work with, the type of work you want to do, because the type of work you get started with, what you start building your portfolio into, is what ultimately you'll get more work to do, if that makes sense. So again, in your elevator speech, that does not preclude you from doing other types of work. What it does is it becomes kind of a magnet for the work you do the most of. So think about, like, in my elevator speech, what is the type of client I most want to appeal to? And that's what I would use your elevator speech for. It doesn't preclude you from someone else coming and saying, hey, can you do this for me instead? And saying yes and creating a contract for it. But it does help be a magnet for the type of work you really want to do long term. Connected to rates, how do you set project expectations? I recently completed my first copywriting freelance gig and charged on a per project basis. There were so many unexpected parts of the project that I ended up making very little per hour. How do you anticipate that? Great question. Setting expectations is one of the most important things you can do when you're doing client work. This GIF is slowing down my video, so I'm going to go back over here. Setting expectations is incredibly important, because in your proposal, and this is why a proposal template is really helpful, you want to create what is called a statement of work, or like a project scope for the project, to say, this is what I'm charging, and these are the discrete deliverables that I'm promising, or the number of hours that I'm promising, so that if someone comes to you and starts adding on these different things, you can say, sorry, that is out of scope. It's called scope creep in this world, where people, usually with good intentions, non-malicious intentions, just think they can keep adding on And if that's not in the proposal, if that's not in the contract, then you can say, hey, I would love to do that, but because this is out of scope, it's going to cost this much money and take this much time. And that's how I fight that back. I do like pricing things generally on a project basis or a value-based pricing basis, where you say, hey, let me ask you some questions as to why you want to do this project and what you're expecting this to become for you. Because usually, they're going to articulate, I want more clients, I want more business, I want to increase revenue, I want to lower costs. And that helps you say, okay, if you think that our work that we're going to do together is going to end up making you $5,000 over the next month, then I'm going to price my project at $2,000, $4,000, something less than that. So I can just say, hey, if this works the way we think it will, this will pay for itself in a matter of a month, 2 months, whatever it is. Project-based pricing is really good because if you price hourly, it encourages you to take more time on the project and encourages them to want you to spend less time. So you work slower, and you either work slower to make more money, or they push you to work faster and the project is less good a lot of times. So hourly pricing is really hard to do well. Any tips for working with companies based abroad? Worth it when it comes down to taxes? I'm not a CPA, and I've only worked domestically personally. If I were to work with companies abroad, I would talk with a CPA about what that means to make that decision based on what that agreement looks like to you. Because I'm sure there's a threshold, like below a certain price or below a certain level of revenue, it's not worth it. And then above that, it is really worth it. That's what I would anticipate the trade-off to be. So you should really talk to an accountant about that. I don't anticipate that there's any reason not to. Like, you'll still have to claim the income. There might be like an exchange of currency that creates a pain point of kind, but it shouldn't be a problem. I'm currently a sole proprietor, says Katie. Is there a reason an LLC is better? I like an LLC because it does have different protections as a legal entity. In both cases, you're going to file one tax return. You can operate as a business, as a sole proprietor, but a single member LLC is virtually the same as a sole proprietor with some additional protections and I think even ability to do things on a banking side, but I'm not 100%. Daphne says, from a hiring perspective, are there good and bad portfolios you'll find in Upwork? There are good and bad portfolios on Upwork. I would look for those with great reviews. Yes, agree. Lauren Shepnoff, thank you. Thanks. Great. Much thanks.
I see a question about learning a new language as a freelance teacher, like doing like some sort of dual language, or I would say probably translation, like translation services for businesses is probably something huge for their human resources companies or for their human resources departments. Anyone who needs to translate materials, that might be somewhere to look.
Yes, I would agree. I'm sure there is a market for tutoring as a language tutor. I think that's definitely something that's an option. You'll be working with individuals probably, and you just have to find people who are interested in learning that language. There might be a marketplace for that on Upwork. I would avoid Fiverr, to be honest. I brought up Fiverr earlier. I would really avoid Fiverr and focus on Upwork more and more. But to Daphne's point, there are a lot of companies who do translation of their products, of their materials, and somebody who can help do translation into other languages is useful.
And specifically from an educational standpoint, if you look at educational companies that might be trying to make things in multiple languages to merge into new markets, they might just want to do a consulting service with you for that.
Maggie says, in regards to the LLC, important to have your name in the name. Pros, cons to this. Recommended to have a skill in the name. I'm thinking about making a name not too specific, but not too random either. So you can be really flexible on this. I tell people not to let this slow you down because your specific LLC name doesn't have to show up in your branding, on your website. It doesn't really matter. And if you find that you eventually want to use a different name, you just file basically an amendment on that LLC called a DBA, a doing business as, so that it operates the same way under that LLC with a different name. So you could just use your name. Like I could say J. Klaus Creative LLC, and that's an easy thing for me to spin up and it makes sense. And if I put it on an invoice, it makes sense. So I wouldn't make it like too crazy or cute if you don't have like a clear reason and story and brand behind it that you want. But really don't let it slow you down. Hey, thank you, Kim, for the coffee. I appreciate that. Great. I don't have a hard stop, so if people have more questions, I'm happy to hang on here for a little bit longer. Otherwise, like I said, I will be sending you guys this video via email. I'll send you the slides as well. I'll have this link here as well if you do want to join the courses. It gets incredible feedback. I've had literally tens of thousands of students on LinkedIn go through these courses, and it's really highly rated. So if it is something that you want to take seriously and you want to invest in, it's there, and this is the best way to do it. Thank you, says Maggie. Thank you, says Christina. Thank you, says L. Alexis. Awesome. You guys are great. Thank you. I'll cut it there. Seems like we covered everything we needed to cover. If you have any questions after this, feel free to follow up. Erica says, when does a generous pricing offer end? Erica, that is a week from today. I gave it a week. Awesome. Great, guys. Follow up with the email if you want. Daphne, thank you for co-hosting. Thanks for making this happen. Thanks for bringing people together.
Thanks for having us. So I'm so grateful. I've already got a couple DMs on Instagram of people saying how great it was.
Oh, good. Okay, great. Awesome, guys. Well, thank you, and I hope we'll be in touch.